The moose is the largest species of deer and is one of the largest land mammals found across the northern regions of Eurasia and North America. Did you know at one point moose could be found in New Zealand, with some even saying that moose could still live on in its wilderness? Welcome to Cryptid Corner, the series all things cryptids, and today we are going to look into the Fiordland moose. Now, you may be wondering how moose got to New Zealand, and to explain that, we need to look into New Zealand's history with big game hunting. When Europeans began to set up shop in New Zealand, they would be met by an absence of big game due to the unique biology of the islands. With this in mind, the government of New Zealand had the idea of turning the wilderness of the islands into a paradise for game hunting, importing and releasing several game animals like deer, ram, and antelope. They would try to introduce moose onto Southland near the town of Hokitika in the year 1900, but this attempt would end in failure as most of the calves would perish on transport, and the few that would survive the journey and reach adulthood would refuse to breed once they reached maturity. But in 1910, the Canadian government would again donate 10 moose, this time 4 bulls and 6 cows, that would be released into the Fiordland region of South Island, a region on the southwest tip of the island and is known for its steep mountains, cold weather, and dense forests. Hunters would regularly spot moose at Dusky Sound, which is the location that the moose were initially released, and if you ever watched my phantom kangaroo video, this is the same place that those dudes on that boat claimed to have spotted a 30-foot tall kangaroo. That's a wild video if you want to check that out too. All was thought to be well regarding the moose population, but behind the scenes, things were not going all peachy. You see, on paper, Fiordland seems like a pretty moose-friendly area, but the region's climate makes it hard for enough plants to grow year-round to keep a sustained population of moose fed. Or at least this is what people thought. We'll get to that later. The whole big game initiative caused a lot of ecological devastation that the island still hasn't really recovered from. But hey, that's besides the point. We might talk about that in another video. A mature cow takes about 243 days to carry a child, and with numbers and food so low, it's not hard to see how this population wouldn't be sustainable. And on top of that, red deer had outperformed the moose at every turn, as they were far more suitable for this region. Also, you gotta figure this was initially 10 moose that were released, and if hunters were to kill a single moose, the population drops by 10%. There weren't 10 moose on the island when they gave the go-ahead for hunting. There were plenty more around that time, but that's besides the point. Also, when I say cow, I'm talking about moose, right? Cow and bull are just gender terms for mooses in this context. But in 1952, the last confirmed sighting of a Fiordland moose would be captured on camera, showing a lone cow by the water, not knowing that she may be the last of her kind on the island. And after this, it is highly believed that the moose had gone extinct on the island. Despite this, many more still believe that moose lived on long after this assumed local extinction, with them providing a good deal of evidence to back up their claims. One of the first reported encounters with a Fiordland moose post-1952 was said to have occurred the next year in 1953, with a man named Fred Stewardson claiming to have captured photographs of moose in Wet Jacket Arm. But these photographs were debunked and confirmed to have been taken in Canada, not New Zealand. They found this out by looking at the vegetation, mainly the grass and the trees in the background, and they were quick to find out that, yeah, this wasn't in New Zealand. Following this, it had become widely accepted that moose in the region had gone extinct. But this would change in the 1970s. In 1971, a hunter had claimed to have shot a bull and also claimed to have seen a cow with a calf accompanying her. And in 1972, even more evidence would come to light. Following the report of a moose being shot the year prior, the Forest Research Institute would launch an investigation in Dusky Sound and Wet Jacket Arm, led by local hunter biologist and Fiordland moose expert Ken Tustin. And they would find droppings, tracks, and signs of grazing in the area. This evidence supported the idea that there still was a small population of moose living in the region, and to make things even more definitive, Hair and a shed moose antler were found in 1976. Ken had trail cams set up all around the area in hopes of capturing a photo of a moose. And while sifting through endless red deer footage, a 1995 photograph seems to have shown a young moose. This definitely does look like a moose, may I add. I've never seen a moose before in real life, but that looks pretty moose-like. In 2001, a hair sample from the island would be DNA tested, revealing that it did indeed belong to a moose, showing that they could have lived on well into the 2000s, about 50 years after they were presumed extinct. Over the years, the story of the Fiordland moose would become more widespread, and in 2011, New Zealand companies Mojo and Hallensteins would put out a $100,000 bounty to anyone who could show photographic proof of a moose living on South Island, raising global interest for those out-of-place flesh tanks living in New Zealand. In 2020, helicopter pilot Ben Young, who had just started working in the area, would be brought on a ride-along to get himself familiar, when in a small clearing, he would spot a moose. Now, what makes this encounter very interesting is that Ben used to live in British Columbia, where he would work as a hunting guide and had a great wealth of experience hunting moose. A funny thing is that when Young first moved to the area into New Zealand, he believed that the moose had died out, but upon seeing a big old droopy-eared cow in the clearing, he was left speechless. And Ken Tustin put it, right time, right place, right person. But unfortunately, the cow fled before he could take a photo, so maybe he wasn't there in quite the right time, but the other two still stand. And as recently as March 13th of this year, 2025, another moose sighting would take place in Fiordland when American veterinarian Norbert Negan and his wife Virginia would spot a cow, this time off of Kepler Track. The moose had only stood before them for a mere 5 seconds before fleeing, being long gone before a phone could be drawn. The two were Minnesota natives and had encountered moose several times in the wild, yet were puzzled by a moose being in New Zealand of all places. The two would get to a resting place where they would take a break and turn to Google for any information on their encounter. There they would learn all about the story of the Fiordland moose and would get into contact with Ken Tustin and the Anal Department of Conservation, where the couple would tell all about their miraculous encounter with a moose in New Zealand. Now, while going in to edit this video up, I actually discovered even more evidence of the moose living here, this time from New Zealand-born hunter Matt Ellis, who has had extended periods of time hunting in Alaska, where he would hunt grizzly bear and moose, and he had claimed to find teeth marks on trees higher up than any other animal in the area could. And he even claims to have found teeth, but due to the rain contaminating it, they couldn't test it thoroughly. He also had claimed to hear vocalization of a moose before in the park, and I do feel also he is a very qualified individual to hear these types of noises, given he has hunted moose and grizzly in Alaska. These tree marks are extremely recent. These tree marks were found just after the most recent sighting that I cited in this video. So within the month of March, 2 really strong supporting evidence for the prolonged existence of moose in Fiordland have came out. I just found this out while editing and gathering images and stuff for the video, so how cool is that? Now, with all of this evidence of moose still living in New Zealand, it gets really hard to doubt that there still could be a small population being alive and well. The photograph from 1995 does seem pretty moose-like to me, but it is pretty low resolution as it's just a frame from a video, and given the Canada photo from earlier, we do need to be on point when it comes to photographic evidence. At first, I'd figured that these sightings would be cases where large red deer would be mistaken for a moose, but each of the witnesses all were pretty familiar with moose. Kent Huston just couldn't ask for better witnesses, often expressing how each of them adds so much to the authenticity of the sightings and this case in general. Ken believes that a population of about 20 to 30 moose live in Fiordland National Park. And personally, I feel like I agree. Maybe 20 to 30 might be a little bit big, but I don't know, at least something like 15 to 20. There's just so much evidence that the moose could still be alive that all we really need at this point is film. But the only argument against this could be the scarcity of the sightings. After all, a moose is a pretty damn hard animal to miss, given how huge it is. But in a region composed of steep hills and lush forests, I can see how a moose could be relatively hidden. And given that they were brought to this island for the sole purpose of being shot, I can see why they'd be hesitant to come say hi. The story of the Fiordland moose is a truly bizarre one, with an animal being transported to the other side of the world, being presumed extinct in that region some 40 years later, and crossing over into cryptid status. When it comes to plausible cryptids, the Fiordland moose seems like an extremely plausible one, and I personally believe in it. I personally think that moose still live in the Fiordland National Park region. With reliable witnesses who have experience with moose, and given the last sighting was just 2 months prior to the release of this video, I feel like somebody might be collecting that 100K soon. One more search might just be all that it takes. Just a reminder that that bounty counts towards photographic evidence of the animal, not a dead body. Definitely don't try to hunt down these moose, as their numbers already would be quite low in this circumstance. If you really want to go hunting for moose, go to Canada or somewhere in the US, not New Zealand. And that's going to do it for the Fiordland moose. I kind of forgot about the Fiordland moose for a while, but then I remembered, like, oh yeah, that guy's pretty cool. Let me do a video on that. Because I figure it's been a while since we did a plausible cryptid, in particular one of the out of place animal type of cryptids. I kind of like those. I like those a lot. You know, like big cats in England, or this, or the kangaroos in America and all over the world. I think that's just a really cool thing where you take an animal, you put it somewhere else. Is that horrible on the ecosystem? Yes, and we could probably do a whole video on how New Zealand's ecology has been completely destroyed. So many birds have gone extinct because of the introduction of deer and possums and cats and rats and stuff like that. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you still think that moose can be found in this area? You think that the moose are still holding on given all of the evidence presented so far? What other cryptids do you want me to cover in the future? What other videos do you want me to cover? Let me know in the comments. I always want to hear what you all have to say. And if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe if you like this type of content. But I will see you in the next one.